This episode of the Multiracialverse podcast is brought to you by Eviton Couture, a brand born from a powerful vision and a deep connection to heritage. Founded by Shinnecock brothers Jason Tech King and Wayon Moon Smith, Eviton represents resilience and pride. From handmade tie-dye to wellness-focused athletic wear, each piece is crafted with intention and positivity, smudged with sage for good vibes, and delivered to you with love. Join the Eviton family on their journey of empowerment and inspiration. Hit up Moon on Instagram at Eviton_KS. That is native spelled backwards _KS to view product and place an order. Eviton Couture. Feel the spirit of resilience in every stitch.
The 23andMe DNA health test came out where they could see if you have any history of certain family illnesses, and that you would get the report. Yeah, which was pretty amazing. So my wife got that for me, and okay, let's do it. So one, didn't have any history of serious family illness, so that was good. We felt good about that. But I did say, yes, share my DNA. Let me see if there's any connections out there. And you know, if you've ever done those things, you get like thousands of fourth, fifth cousins, down the line. No one really close. But that was maybe in 2017, 18, something around there. And that's kind of what I had. And I would just kind of do a little bit of research and see who was close. I'd send a couple messages and sometimes, really no one responded.
No.
But I would say then right almost at the start of COVID, or just maybe a year before, is where I had a match of a first, a second cousin. I was like, wow, this is real.
Wow.
And so I sent a message to this person and I said, hey, here's my story. I was adopted and I'm doing research right now and I'd love to connect. If I see we're closely related, if you have any information you could share, that'd be great. And yeah, I left it at that. And then I got a response at some point. And so we started communicating and I started sharing. So I used the information that I got from the Facebook adoption support group. And I said, okay, well, here's the names that I was given as a potential match. And I gave the name of my potential mother, and I gave the last name of the father on the birth certificate. And we're connected on Facebook and we're just messaging. And I remember my wife sitting next to me and I'm just like waiting for the response. And she was like, oh my God, the cousin. And she was like, we think we know who your father was. And it was just like the adrenaline rush that I experienced was like, this is actually happening. I was like, okay, tell me more. And she said, exchanging information. And then she said, well, if that's the case, you would be Chemehuevi Indian.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Multiracialverse podcast. I am your host, Antonio Fernandez. I am so excited about today's guest, John Siegel. John is a management consultant with over 20 years of experience in IT and leadership, and he served as a director of information technology at a nonprofit in Los Angeles helping the unhoused community. But today we're diving into a deeply personal journey for John. John was privately adopted shortly after his birth in the early 1970s and grew up knowing he had Native American ancestry, but with no details about his specific tribe. With the help of online DNA testing and a lot of time during COVID, John recently discovered his true Indigenous American roots and reconnected with his biological family, including 2 half-siblings. On June 24, 2023, John and his 10-year-old daughter, Olivia, achieved a lifelong dream of becoming enrolled citizens of the Chemehuevi Indian tribe of California. And in June of 2024, they attended their first powwow together. Join us as we explore John's incredible journey of self-discovery, identity, and reconnecting with his heritage. It's a story of perseverance, families, and the power of knowing your roots. Welcome to the Multiracialverse, John. How you doing today?
Antonio, I'm doing great. Great to see you and glad I got to chat with you today.
Yes. I'm so excited to learn and to share actually about your journey to self. As somebody said that I had on before, we're always in draft as we're learning about ourselves. So tell us a little bit about your background, what you want to share, maybe about what you do. But we talked a little bit off camera. This will be mostly about your journey to you. So
yeah, no, I'm happy. So excited to be here sharing the story today with you. And just get into it. John Siegel. Here we're basically neighbors in the Westland in the Oregon area. I think us coming together and meeting really kind of at a pivotal moment in my life as myself. I've gone through a journey as I'm adopted through my family, and I've recently discovered my biological roots. And in particular, what we're talking today, which I've been really interested in, is my connection with my Indigenous past, my Indigenous ancestors, which I've recently connected with. It's been all taking place really since the beginning of COVID. So just in the last 3 years, this coming out, this new information, new family. So I've just been really going through a lot of journey, a lot of discovery in these last 3 years that it's been pretty almost like a movie script. It's amazing what's been going through. I've been taking every opportunity I can to share the story, to continue to learn and discover. And I'm just kind of excited to talk about that, which involves one part, my adoption story, and the other part is my reconnecting with my Indigenous ancestry. Yeah.
Let's start with the adoption story. Tell us about that piece of your journey.
Yeah. So I'm a Gen Xer, born in the 70s. I was adopted, private adoption of my family. I was also my sister, not my biological sister, but I was adopted into a family with a sister who was already adopted, about 4 years older than me. So, really just when I had the earliest memory I could from my family telling me that I was adopted, it was never kept a secret from me. Just as I growing up, they were open with me and they said, hey, here's the story. Just want to, we're being open and, you're adopted. It was private, so they didn't have any knowledge or a connection with the biological family. But they just shared with me, and it was just something that it happened. I heard the story, and then I just grew up knowing that my family I considered my family to be my natural family. I never thought it was odd or weird. One kind of anecdote I just remember is this kid in the, growing up in 70s and 80s, Facts of Life TV show. I always remember the episode of Natalie. She found out she was adopted. Her family never told her. And it was it was a whole episode about finding out you're adopted. And I remember that saying, why is that a big deal? Adoption's great. I never thought it was an odd story. And I just remember I really appreciate my family being open with me and just, not hiding anything from me. And they just were saying, yeah, this is your journey and this is how you came into our family. So from early on, I just always appreciated how they shared that with me. And I think just kind of just looking at the arch of this story here, private adoption, I really didn't have much information to go on except for, when my family came to time, but you talk about identity and what's your background, ethnicity. From what my mom and parents had known, they said, well, we think what we were told is have some European ancestry, maybe German and Italian, and also Native American. So that's part where, once I found that out, that stuck with me more than anything throughout life, where I just really was curious about that. The more I learned and kind of discovered about Native American history and cultures, that stuck with me throughout my life, where it's I was really curious. I wanted to find out more about that. I always wondered, what's my tribe? Where did that start? I had so many questions. And then that really just kind of carried through most of my adult life till then you take, fast forward to when 23andMe DNA testing came out, where there could be a reality of actually connecting and finding your roots. So really kind of goes from being kind of a mysterious kind of story and a fantasy of wondering what it was. And then I kind of really made it a reality in the last few years of finding out my story. So been a pretty amazing arc from that standpoint.
Wow. So when did you mentioned you started asking questions? When was that? Were you how young were you?
It's really early memories. I don't know if back then or that era, if really we think about identity like we do now, or just the awareness of it. But just generally come up so I was adopted into a family. Just they're European white ancestry. That was my family. That's kind of maybe how I identified growing up. But there is a little bit very slight differences where maybe growing up, people would see me and like, oh, what's your background? What are you? They couldn't fit me in a box exactly like, what's your background? And my my boilerplate response was, German, Italian, and Native American. That's what I know. That's my background. So the questions were just really kind of curiosity going throughout life. I think really just kind of the way it became more real is just getting, fast forwarding later in life, where it's like, I had a curiosity, but I wasn't really like seeking. I had a desire to like seek out, hire an investigator and find my biological family. I kind of accepted that their part of the story and their journey was, giving me life, and now I'm with my family, and that was it. They had their reasons, so I didn't really have any judgment towards that, and I was just going to let that be. Just had a curiosity with it. But then I did have like kind of, natural curiosity in finding out. Like I really wanted to hone in on the Native American side of things. The one piece that my mom had told me that she thought that maybe that I might have Blackfoot Indian ancestry. I don't really know exactly, where or how that came up, but that's what she recalled. So then I latched onto that, and I was like, getting older, I was, getting books on Blackfoot tribe history and researching that as much as I could. And I would mention that as I would tell people I might be Blackfoot, but that's all I had.
I was wondering about that. If you at all growing up, you mentioned what was it? German? Did you say German, Italian?
German and Italian was what
If you attached yourself to any of those ethnicities at all anymore, or but it sounds like you kind of went the path of learning more about this. This might be the indigenous area or tribe or whatever that I'm part of. The
closest. I mean, there were some things where my grandparents, they may have had like their family came from Germany. There may have been some like say German foods introduced, and wasn't like we were living immersed in German culture, but maybe a curiosity about that. Outside of like being in my teenage years going to Oktoberfest and then World Cup came along, I'd say, oh, let me Team Germany or Team Italy. Sure. Maybe there's a it wasn't really that curious or dove that deep into those cultures. Again, really, it was just about, my curiosity on the Native American side, which I will say to the credit of my family, which is a wonderful family, I feel pretty fortunate growing up in a loving home. You think about the quintessential, childhood story, two parents at home, had a sister. I always had one or two dogs, upper middle class family. You look at the social media accounts of like nostalgia, growing up in the 70s or 80s, that kind of was my life. I had that privilege of that. Those are great, roots to grow up around. But, as I was getting older, I remember my family and uncle would, if there was say a powwow event in the area, in the community, they would take me to that. I don't know if it was a conscious decision or effort to try and expose me, because there was some connection with that. But I appreciated that. And that kind of was an opportunity for me to stay connected in some ways to that culture, to learn and just kind of really pique my curiosity more.
Wow. And so where were you raised? Were you raised in Oregon or?
No, so raised in Southern California.
Okay.
So in Los Angeles area, if you're a fan of Johnny Carson, calling beautiful downtown Burbank, growing up San Fernando Valley. So those are my roots. And I really appreciated that. That is, that was a diverse area for sure. And I think as I reflect back now, just kind of whatever reason, is for, how I identified or how I felt, where I felt comfortable. It was a diverse area, but I did tend to always gravitate towards social groups that were more of the, Latinx, my Filipino friends, Hispanic friends, those were the groups that I really felt comfortable with. And that I gravitated towards, growing up, I got big into lowrider culture, and I would go to the lowrider shows, and that's, I felt comfortable. That's what I kind of like. So that was, for whatever reason, that's kind of where I felt at home and comfortable with. Growing up, close friends, I'd go to a lot of, quinceañeras, Mexican weddings, I'd be out on the dance floor and my friends would say, well, you're like our honorary Mexican friends. A lot of passions connections there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it all did, was there ever an internal conflict that you remember of? Because I know people, what they call, like, maybe, I can't remember what they call, like, trans something adoptions, where like a white couple adopts a child who is not white. They're either, they're BIPOC or other. Did you ever say, no, I'm like white, like I'm a white guy, or was it kind of just like something that you just were like, I'm something? And
yeah. Yeah. I think I was always proud to share that. Okay. Like mostly I present maybe mostly Caucasian, doing the DNA test. It's like, it is like 75% of, that European heritage and 25% indigenous. So, but I would proudly share, like, hey, this is what I know, German, Italian, Native American. I would not hide that part. But I kind of, growing up in, let's say, mostly in a white family, that was part of my identity. That was like the culture that I grew up in. So it wasn't, like I felt out of place, or maybe that's more of what I identified as growing up. That I just had this part of my DNA was this ancestry, this Native American, indigenous ancestry in my DNA. But I didn't have much more than that. I didn't have any other connection besides, just what I was told.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't have any struggles with that. Fortunately, I just, I was accepted. I fit into my family. So really it was more about, I was maybe making the outward effort to immerse myself in other cultures and connect with just maybe naturally, because that's where I just kind of felt, a kinship there with more diverse background.
And did you just on the part about being adopted? Did you ever have any internal conflict about the idea of being adopted, as far as, why was I put up for adoption, or did you said you didn't really have conflict about fitting in, but was there ever an issue with that? And then your parents, they sound like awesome people, like as far as like the way that they communicated all of this stuff, which is so important, which is probably helped immensely to help you through your childhood. But if you did at all ever question or say, I don't fit in, how did they respond to that?
Yeah, I would say that I feel fortunate that I didn't have those type of, those struggles that didn't fit in. When you talk about what the story was behind my adoption, I think maybe anyone who's adopted may have those sort of questions naturally. Just you start playing with scenarios in your head, like, okay, maybe there was a young couple and not able to take care of a child, or all these different scenarios you can think of. And some of that did come in, and I played with a bit, but it wasn't something that I would say really that obsessed with. Again, I kind of was one where I felt I was in the right place. Where I was where I was meant to be, if you will. So I kind of had more of appreciation that maybe I was given the opportunity, a better opportunity than what could have been, or the best opportunity that I could find. And like I was, thinking about it as I'm reflecting, and all this has happened now. The more I look back on it, it is like, I've told like my biological mother, as we'll get into, is just, I feel like it's been, what happened was the way it meant to happen, but I feel like she gave me the best opportunity in life. I still have the best family I could ask for. And now I've only added to that because now we've reconnected. So it's been kind of, if you think like you're living in the Truman story of remember that movie, it's like, sometimes I feel like that and pinch myself, because it's not everybody has that type of experience who's gone through what I've gone through, but it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I met your mom, and she's just like the sweetest lady. Like, it's just an awesome person. So during COVID, you start to do 23andMe. Tell us about that journey to finding out where your parents were.
Yeah, well, it was. I would say there's like be multiple phases to how I kind of got to where I am now. Yeah. I got to credit what happened. Like initially, this was back in my 30s, and this was kind of before 23andMe and the DNA testing. I had a friend of mine who, similar story, that he was adopted, private adoption. This was at the dawn, to date ourselves, when Facebook was just coming out and had been out. And he told me his story that he reached out. There was this Facebook group, adoption support group, with volunteers. And he had reached out to this group, and he provided his information, and he got back information that he was able to connect and find his biological family. And he had a great experience, and he connected, and he became close with them. And it turned out well for him, and he knew a bit of my story. And he said, "Hey, if you're interested, you should reach out to this group and see what you can find out." And I shared that I was never really one that I wanted to hire an investigator and really dig that deep. I said, "I'll just accept this." But here was a real opportunity and an experience that my friend had. I said, "Well, let me give it a shot." So I reached out to the group. I provided the data that I had known. It was my birthday, name, and the hospital. And they, amazingly enough, it's a private adoption. My records are sealed to me. I would have had to go through a court order to get my unsealed original birth certificate. And somehow they pulled information where they gave me a list of candidates that could have been, birth biological parents.
Wow.
And we kind of whittled it down, and I got a name from them. They said, "Well, here's a name that's possible." And they gave me the names on the birth certificates of the potential father and mother. And they said, "Here's the last names that could be potentially your parents. I have a phone number and address for the mother. Do you want to reach out?" And I was blown away at first. And I was like, "Well, don't you take care of that? Do you facilitate?" They're like, we give you the information. You can do with it what you want. And I stopped everything there. I felt like, and maybe part of this is, I think throughout my life is maybe being a Pisces. I don't know. I always tend to worry more about other people's feelings and how they're going to accept it. I didn't want to just cold call somebody and say, "Hey, did you have a son in the 1970s?" And, maybe cause any pain if there was any issues there.
Yeah.
So I just said, "Okay, I'll take that. I'll hold on to that piece, and maybe I'll do something with it." But I didn't.
Did you ever get close? You actually had the phone in your hand?
I really thought about well, maybe I can have a friend do it, reach out. I considered that, but I just never followed through much more than that. I think it was a few years later where
really quick, with what was going on in your life, was there a reason also to just a general of where you were at in your life of why you also made that decision? Or
so it sounds like young, a long time ago, but maybe I felt at the time I was older, in my 30s, and I did start having thoughts of, well, if I ever wanted to make this happen, I was guesstimating how old my biological family parents might be. So, gosh, it would be a shame to make a connection and they're no longer alive. I had thoughts of maybe there's siblings out there, and it was just I think I just was reflecting on that, where if I was going to do anything, maybe this would be the time to make it a reality. So that was part of my motivation, at least to pursue that as far as I did. And then the second piece to it is then I meet my wife, my now wife. And then we are going to have our daughter, so my wife is pregnant, and, when those, I always answer your health, exam questions, is any known, family illness and condition. And mine was always unknown, adopted. And so that was around the time when the 23andMe, DNA health test came out, where they could see if you have any, history of certain family illnesses, and that you would get the report. Which was pretty amazing. So my wife got that for me, and okay, let's do it. So one, didn't have any history of serious family illness, so that was good. We felt good about that. But I did say, yes, share my DNA. Let me see if there's any connections out there. And if you've ever done those things, you get thousands of fourth, fifth cousins, down the line. No one really close. But that was maybe in 2017, 18, something around there. And that's kind of what I had. And I would just kind of do a little bit of research and see who was close. I'd send a couple messages, and sometimes, really no one responded.
Yeah.
But I would say then right at the, right almost at the start of COVID, or just maybe a year before, is where I had a match of a second cousin. I was like, wow, this is real. This is something this can be potential.
And that's all done through the 23andMe site, or was this through Facebook or not? Okay.
Yeah, all through 23andMe. So there's a messaging, service in there.
Wow.
And so I sent a message to this person and I said, hey, here's my story. I was adopted and I'm doing research right now, and I'd love to connect. If I see we're closely related, if you have any information you could share, that'd be great. And yeah, I left it at that. And then some time had passed because, again, this ancestry or DNA messaging service is not maybe immediate, and everybody they don't pay attention right away. I got a response at some point, and so we started communicating, and I started sharing. So I used the information that I got from the Facebook adoption support group. And I said, okay, well, here's the names that I was given as a potential match. And I gave the name of my potential mother, and I gave the last name of the father on the birth certificate. And now we're connected on Facebook, and we're just messaging. And I remember my wife sitting next to me, and I'm just like waiting for the response. And she was like, oh my God. The cousin, and she was like, we think we know who your father was. And it was just like the adrenaline rush that I experienced was like, this is actually happening. I was like, okay, tell me more. And she said, exchanging information, and then she said, well, if that's the case, you would be Chemehuevi Indian.
Wow.
And again, the emotions washing over me is like I'm like almost 50 at this point. And like I've asked, like I want to find who my tribe was, and now I'm finding out this answer. So yeah, it was an emotional moment. It's playing out in real time. My wife is like, we're there, like, oh my God, we're on the edge of our seats. And then she shares photos of who my biological father would be.
Wow.
And we're a spinning image. It's like
wow.
Look at the show Quantum Leap, like me in a different era. Time travel. Yeah. It looks just like me. And I was like, yeah, that's my father. And so that was amazing. Unfortunately I did learn that he did pass away some years before, about 10 years earlier. But then she shared like, well, your biological mom, who we think she is, she would still be alive. We could reach out for you. And that's when that part became reality. And that was the last name that was on the birth certificate. That's where those connections happened.
Wow.
So yeah, that was an amazing moment and a pivotal moment at that time where it's like, okay, now this has all become real and I've got this information. So where am I going to go from here?
So what did these individuals that the first cousin, what did they know about your dad once they connected you? Like, did they know, like, were their parents your dad's brother or sister, or what was the connection there?
And so, and to this day, like as I've reconnected, I've got growing amount of cousins in the family tree that I'm keeping track of. But yes, she was essentially first cousin, daughter of a second aunt. Essentially, yeah, like her grandparents were siblings of my father's parents. So that kind of connection there.
Oh, okay.
I could have brought a chart because I could use one still. But yeah, so it was a close connection. And yes, I mean, she proceeded to connect me with other cousins, and information was just flooding in. And just telling me all these amazing stories of my dad, who, as I go to this day, he was like a legend in the family and within the community, just of, how talented he was, how he could do everything, great athlete, enjoyed life. He was, liked to party, had a good time. So certain things I said, oh, okay, I picked that up. Maybe I didn't get the world-class athlete gene, but I could see the zest for life and music and everything else. So, so I just got a lot of stories and photos, and that information was coming in, which was all, and that was my indigenous side, right? So the paternal side of the family was where the indigenous connections came through.
Wow, that's amazing. And there's so many ways we can go now. Like there's so many different branches. What was your family's reaction? And share what was your wife's reaction to this?
Yeah, well, my wife, again, she's experienced it. She's the one that got me the DNA test. She's the one who really encouraged me. She was right there with me throughout of it. So she was so supportive, and she was really encouraging. So I really appreciate having her by my side with it. And our, daughter, a little, again, some of it, I tend to play this protective nature. It's like, I wanted to make sure that what I was finding out, who I was connecting with, that, this was a safe situation, again, not knowing what dynamics are, wanted to find the appropriate time to bring my daughter into this. And then there's my family, my adopted family. At this point, recently it's my mom and my sister. My dad had passed away as well. So they're with me, and they, not shared this. So at this time, yes, we're now moved up to Oregon, the Pacific Northwest. Funny enough to find out that all my family was in Southern California. Go figure. So we're connecting remotely here. But yeah, I had the support of them. I did share more with my sister a bit at this time, because going back to, again, wanting to be sensitive to others' feelings, I was really cognizant of how my adopted mom, would receive this. Not that she wouldn't be supportive, but I didn't want to feel like I was, doing this and would hurt her feelings in any way that, I think I overthought it a bit, but I was really trying to protect her feelings. So I wanted to get all this information as much as I could and vet everything out. And then later I shared the connection, like, hey, I've connected, I found these connections. She knew I was on 23andMe and I was getting a few hits. But, I think the best moment for me in this was saying, I found my connection. I found my indigenous side of the family. I found my biological mother, who was the other part, white European side of the family, surviving, and such a wonderful person. Our connection was another side of the story that could go many different directions. Whole story. But I'll just say that, the family connected with her, and there was some time, because this was a bit of a shock for her as well, because, come to find that she, obviously she said she never forgot about me, was always thinking about me, but such time had passed that she was getting connected from people that she knew of, but was not they were not very that close. But is this a scam on social media? Like, what's going on here? Finally put the pieces together, that this was, okay, this is legit. And she reached out to me on Facebook. I still have screenshots of this. Is just a beautiful message of, how much she's thought about me every February. My birthday is just the most welcoming and safe message that for someone going into that scenario. Wow. I just felt it was just amazing. And then connecting with her and speaking with her and kind of hearing the story and how that came together. One, I just felt love right away. And two, I felt like this is definitely, I need to unite my mom, my biological mom. So I had to make that happen. So I shared the story, and my mom, my adopted mom, was very receptive and so supportive, and all the fears I had were washed away. The anxiety of hurting feelings, because she just was so happy for me that I made that connection. And again, it's gone pretty perfectly. So
wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Did your adopted sister, when she was witnessing all this going on, was she questioning where she was from, her background and things like that? Did that bring that up for her?
Yeah, I think that came up in a sense where in my teenage years, there was again, I shared that my sister was adopted. She's about 4 years older than me. She had her own experience where she had reached out through different, again, this is the dawn of the internet, so pre-Facebook now, but there was online groups, and she did something similar, I think, where she was in a forum. Her biological mom found her. Her experience was much different than mine, and unfortunately wasn't as positive, where the biological mom didn't respect boundaries and kind of came unannounced to our house. I remember knocked on the door and really made my sister feel uncomfortable. She got some information about her background, but it was kind of opposite experience of what I had. So, they're no longer in contact. I think she, maybe when I told her a little bit, hey, I was kind of sharing her updates along the way. So she was looking out for me and wanted to make sure I didn't have a similar experience. Yeah. And I told her, I said, look, I don't have a romantic vision of how this is going to turn out. Maybe this is going to be a similar situation. I'm going to see it through. But she was kind of protective in that way. the fact that this turned out as good as it did, and I shared that with them. I think she was just so happy that my experience was much different, much more positive. And, a bonus to this is I found out that I've had a half brother and a half sister that I've all brought into the fold. So, she was like, this is great. Her family's expanding. I've got more siblings now. So yeah, no, she was really positive in that sense.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so you get connected to your biological mom. Yeah. Share what the reunion was like.
So again, interesting time that this was right at the beginning of COVID. So we made these connections online, and this was maybe late 2019. Then we're starting to ramp up, oh gosh, we have to see each other. We've got to, meet, and you're in Southern California. I'm up here in Oregon. Let's figure out a time to make this happen. I think it was February 2020. So things are just about to go down here. My wife's, unfortunately, she had an uncle a relative pass away. The funeral was going to be the services in Southern California in LA. So we had plans. We flew down there. But, I share look, I'm going to be in the area. I told my biological mom this. It's can we connect? And so we found time to connect in LA. Yeah, she stayed in it was with family. We had the family services. She stayed at a hotel. I remember this in Pasadena. I showed up with my wife and daughter, and I knock on the hotel door, and then I was like, did someone order a son for room service? And we just crying moment, emotions. And we just had a great connection, shared so many stories. And, she talked about, what everything I was asking about, I was curious about, what my origin story was and how things came to be. And it just, all the connections were just so kind of also talk about nature and nurture and just how we were so connected. Our first connections, we shared email addresses, and both of our emails have a classic car in the name. And
oh my gosh,
we both had these classic cars. It's that's funny. She to this day goes to outdoor festivals and shows, concerts. She loves concerts, and I share that passion as well. So it was so easy. It was just a smooth, connection, and just felt completely, again, safe and loving. And so it's, it's been so much bonus to this, outside of my Indigenous reconnection and that family. Yeah. She has, her mom is still alive. So my daughter has a great grandmother.
Wow.
Now, and she's going strong and doing great. And other cousins, so my wife is Mexican origin, and she's got a huge family, lots of cousins. I had this tiny family, and now I think I've almost surpassed her in family members and cousins. So it's kind of interesting in that regard.
So what was the origin story?
So, I don't think my mom will mind me sharing this. And so another part of this in the adoption, when you go through, is trying to figure out, when am I going to call my biological mother? I was going by first name a lot. And then we got to a point where I felt comfortable. It's Mama, I'm going to call you Mama. I got my mom and my mama, and and I got two moms. So I feel pretty good there. So from my mama, and what she told me, this is talking the time, early 1970s, my father, biological father, free love, free spirit, he liked to have a good time. But, I think they had met mutual friends, got to date for a little bit. She told me a story how she, one of their dates was at the Great Western Forum, which is Forum in Inglewood, where the Lakers played. The Rolling Stones had their tour and concert in 1972, and that was the big date they went on. And I was like, there you go. There's more of my passion for rock and roll and music. But, she said that, brief dating period that she realized that, he was kind of, he liked to party, there was a lot of, that was not her mode. So they did not connect on that level. So they stopped seeing each other. But they lived in the same kind of community in the same area. And she shared that, that she became pregnant. She found out she was pregnant. He was out of the picture, and he was off, having fun and partying and dating other girls. So in her mind, when she found out she was pregnant, she shared with her mom. And okay, like, what are their options? What can we do? And she shared that, her mom said, look, the best thing for you, I think if let's put this baby up for adoption, difficult decision.
Yeah.
She was looking at the environment that I might have, okay, if I bring my biological father into this, is that the best environment for, for this baby? Is that for some other opportunity? She made a tough decision. He never knew. And, I think really knowing at the time, I don't think he was in a position that he had a son from a previous early marriage. I think he got married just after high school, and then they had then since separated to my half brother's mother. And then later on, I guess between that time, I also had a half sister. So he was loving life, doing his thing, not really at that time looking to be a father figure maybe at home. So it was the decision she made. And so she went through her experience of, kind of being almost tucked away, like for a bit, and from her friends, from her, her social circles to go through the pregnancy. And
was she a teenager or was she?
She was late teens. I would say 19 at the time. So, we're talking kids, so I think about really the reality. So, she had her life to live. And again, I think this really, you look in hindsight, we talk about like the emotions with it, after she had a difficult pregnancy and she went through some health issues. But, she gave birth and she didn't see me from that point. And I was, basically then taken through the agency where I was just a couple days later adopted by my family. They sent her a picture of me that was in my little suit and a profile of the family that adopted me. And she held onto that. And I now have that. She gave that photo and that letter to me. And again, that was like an amazing connection part of the story to have that piece. But yeah, then she went on. She had her life and jobs, and she never, remarried. She never had any other kids. She was, she had siblings who had children, so she was, always, the aunt that would take care of all the nieces and nephews, and the favorite aunt in the family. And so, that story was kept between her and her mom. So her siblings and those family members, they never knew. So that was another part of this when, my story was coming out and we connected. She was doing the same thing. She was sharing with her family. But one, she shared with her mom, who was, also so emotional that she never thought, she felt a sense of guilt that maybe questioned if that was the right thing to do for her daughter. And she, she did the right thing, but, we got to connect, and, I've connected with my grandma, and look, I've turned out pretty well, I think. And this is a great decision. So there was that part of it. And then my mama had to go and share with her siblings. And again, they've been so welcoming, and I've gone to see them now. We visited and try to connect as much as we can with the geographic distance. But it's just it's like a family that I never had a gap in time with. We fit right in. We hit it off.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it just feels pretty natural.
And so when did your mom and your mama meet?
So they met again with travel time and that. This was just, I would say, just last year. So a couple of years into this.
Okay.
Yeah. So it took a bit of time to connect, but then she came up. My mama came up to see us and to visit, and got to arrange a meeting. And that was, again, they just hit it off. They went off in a corner and were talking, and just for me to observe that and see that, again, such a special moment. Again, leave all of my fears and anxieties that I drum up in my mind, thinking, oh, this could go so many ways, but it was just playing out perfectly. So that was a recent thing, and they're in touch to this day, sending each other cards and notes and text messages. And so, yeah, couldn't have asked that to go any better.
Did your mama, did she share her yearning, or if she yearned to meet you or see you in all those years that before you actually did meet her?
Yeah, it was, her main thing. So she told me she never forgot about me on my birth date. But she was kind of keeping that, again, somewhat private. I think she held the respect that, she trusted that I was with a loving family in a loving home. I think she had the same thing where she had a curiosity, a desire to like maybe to know, but she never expressed like where she was going to go out and try and find it. Again, with California laws and the privacy with it, it's just kind of something that she accepted and she would just kind of keep internally and hold on to. And I do feel a sense of that, not regret, but I'm sorry that she had to go through that for that long. Cause I know that part was tough for her. But she went on to be successful in her career and enjoying life, and I'm so glad that she had that experience without having to figure out life and raise a kid at such a young age. I think that played out the way it should have played out.
Wow. So we met at a school function, a cultural function, where you were sharing about the nation or tribe that you're, the indigenous, exactly. So let's hear about that part of your journey.
So the interesting part of this was when I found this connection with my cousin, and when she had said the words like, "If this is the fact, you are Chemehuevi," and I had to like scratch my head, and I had to admit I had never heard of Chemehuevi tribe. I knew the larger nations, Sioux and Apache and Cheyenne. This was new to me, so I had to go into research study mode, in which I immediately did and got books on Chemehuevi culture and researched as much as I could. So I was now kind of in this reconnecting, this discovery phase. So I kind of took that information and everything that I've compiled, and I've visited our reservation, which the Chemehuevi tribe, they are a Southern Paiute tribe. So think about within the they call it a desert tribe. So they're in Southwest Americas, spanning from Colorado, Arizona, Utah, California. Our tribe is located along the Colorado River. So a lot of people know where Lake Havasu is in Arizona. Our reservation is on the eastern side of California, on the California border. So I made a point to go out there and connect with my family. My first visit was get to see my half siblings, my half brother and sister, our first time meeting. Met at the Las Vegas airport and at the In-N-Out in Las Vegas. 3 SoCal kids. Out. And then we connected. I've been there, and I took information from going to the reservation. Before this event that we met had happened, so much had happened too. We're part of our tribal, knowledge and journey is going through the enrollment process. So my family said, "Hey, you're entitled to be an enrolled member of the tribe. Your father was an enrolled member, and we have these. You can be part of the tribe in that way, and there's benefits with that." But the first thing I thought of was, going through my childhood, wanting to reconnect with my tribe, and to actually have an opportunity to be an official citizen of the tribe. I said, I'm all in. Let me go, whatever it takes. That was an interesting process to go through, the enrollment, because every tribe has its different requirements, and they sometimes go by which they call blood quantum levels and kind of verifying your identity. That's a whole other topic about blood quantum and colonial type of viewpoint, but that's for a lot of the federally recognized tribes. That's kind of their in their bylaws. I wrote this long letters, like, here's pictures of my father who looks just like me, and I had 23andMe reports. Found out they weren't taking that at the time, so it was about a 1.5-year journey to try and get everything needed. And finally, it boiled down to, they said, okay, we'll accept an official DNA lab result, not 23andMe. So I got my surviving, members, which is my half sibling, and we took a DNA test. The tribal council accepted it, and so a pivotal moment for myself and my daughter. We were on a road trip last summer. We did this road trip in our camper travel trailer, went throughout the states, and we went to visit the reservation. On that trip is when I found out the council had accepted us, and my daughter and I were enrolled while we were there on the same day as members of the Chemehuevi tribe. And that was, again, my daughter is now going through this, and this is where I really was has been in my mind is like, I'm now, okay, maybe halfway through my life, hopefully.
Yeah.
As I'm finally getting to catch up and experience this. But now my daughter, who is 10 at the time, now 11, this is important for me, for her to experience, because, she's in kind of a, blended family. My wife is, like I said, Mexican, and she's got, European roots and now, documented indigenous roots aside. So she's got this beautiful blend. And I really wanted her to appreciate that and to be part of that experience. And she's completely, and you saw this, she's really grasped that, and she's really embraced that part of the culture. And so when this opportunity for the school project came up for World Cultural Celebration, she wanted to take on this project. And so we worked together and put that board together on the history of the tribe and of her family and photos that we've discovered. And and she just went on her TED Talk and talked about Chemehuevi.
My daughters loved her. They were like, wow, she did such an awesome job. Yeah. You could tell how very, very passionate about it. So, how does that look? You mentioned, blended family. How does it look, the balance? Because, it seems like, your journey, your wife obviously probably understood, a lot of her origin story and that, and then you start to find your path, and then I don't know if you were consumed with it or if it was something that you took in stride, but how do you balance that now, in the household, as far as sharing those things with your daughter? I'm just curious more about, are there any notable things you've learned as far as, there's these holidays that the Chemehuevi people celebrate that you brought into the household, and then you balance those with, say, for instance, like Dia de los Muertos, or is there something similar in that culture?
Yeah. So it's been a great addition, I think, to our family, because we really, my wife, as proud of her Mexican heritage, and, she's also had a passion for indigenous history and culture. And our home is filled with indigenous and Mexican art and books. The books are her side. She's the big reader, and she brings on many of that. So we were going through and living in LA in that diverse culture. We were going, celebrating Dia de los Muertos, going to Olivia Street, going to all these events. That's one thing about when we moved to Pacific Northwest in Oregon, sometimes you have to seek out that diversity, and it's not as great in the Los Angeles area. But we were already doing that, and we tried to seek out those opportunities. So we were experiencing, involving our daughter in those type of events. Now adding this on, and we were find a powwow event or some indigenous cultural event in the area before this discovery, and now that's kind of enhanced that. So we're making more of a point, one, to go to. They do have those in the area. The local tribes in the area have events that we try to go to. But I'm also, my daughter really is passionate that she wants to visit her reservation, her tribe, as much as she can. So we're actually going a couple weeks. There is an annual powwow event, Chemehuevi Days. It's called Niwuvi Powwow, and it is an event that's annual. It sort of commemorates when Chemehuevi tribe were recognized federally as a tribe in the early 1970s. Whole other topic there, but it's federal recognition as a tribe.
Wow.
That's sort of a celebration of that event. There's annual member meetings, and I went to it last month. My daughter is an official member now, so she's expressed an interest to go, and we want to participate as much as we can. So as much as possible, we're connecting and trying to build that into our family practice of, visiting the reservation, going down, taking part of those events, but also experiencing that, more of that culturally here locally in the area. So, and she's fully loving it. It's not, we're trying to do a safe approach, like not try, you have to go do this, but she's embraced it and she's been willing to do that. It's been a great experience for that.
And the half siblings, were they raised by their mother, their biological mother, and do they have a similar passion and love for the your father's side, and then do your children have cousins or half cousins or whatever they might be that
many more
they can
cousins
meet at these places?
Yeah, so many cousins they're there and loving cousins. It's great. So my half brother was the closest. He's the only one that actually grew up and had maintained a connection with my biological father. So even though his mom and my father were separated, they were still in the same community. And then he knew his father would visit and be connected with him. He was still in and out, kind of doing his thing, but he would stay connected. So I think the story that my half brother told me is like it was in his early teens when he started becoming regularly connected with his dad, and then stay in touch with them. And then he actually, at some point when my biological father moved from the Southern California community to on the reservation, he lived at the reservation. Then my brother also moved to the area. So they experienced time later in life and towards the end of my father's life before he passed. They had their time together and their experience together. My half sister, her experience different than mine. She was raised by her biological mother. Her story where she was raised by who she was told was her biological father. So she didn't discover this until her own 23andMe search connected her and I as being half siblings. And she had like what is this? She was more participating for curiosity.
Yeah.
Her story was much different, and where she found out, okay, my childhood was different than what I was told. She kind of almost lived that, as I mentioned earlier, that facts of life Natalie anecdote. That was kind of maybe her experience where it's like, okay, she had to go through and kind of live through that and deal with that, how she was going to kind of handle this. But she was again, the fact that we connected, she is the full speed ahead. Like we talk about the personalities and us siblings, there's things we have in common and there's things that have our various differences. Yeah. And I sometimes wonder how it would have been if we all grew up in the same household and who would have survived out of that. But she as well, like so we went through that together where, hey, let's become enrolled members of the tribe together. So I helped her because I had started my process a little earlier. And she has become completely involved. Again, her family dynamic a little different, but now her perspective is this is like a biological family to connect with, and I want to become involved in the community. And she is, to her credit, like she has flown out many more times. She's a little closer than me, but she's flown out and become a member of some committees on there, so some cultural preservation committees on the tribe. And so we share, really, her and I have shared the passion of discovering and how can we become active and involved members of the community. We feel like we've got some catch-up work to do, it's a different experience than the family who, were living amongst living on the reservation, living that experience. That was their, how they grew up. We've kind of brought in this, maybe fresh energy and perspective here.
So who are the elders on your father's side? Were there grandparents or, who are the elders on that side?
Well, for immediate family, the surviving members, I have two aunts, so two of my dad's sisters. They have their family, and there are some close cousins that so related to my grandparents. So my biological grandparents have passed. There's other sides to this as well, where my from the indigenous side. So my paternal grandmother is she was Chemehuevi. My paternal grandfather, he was Irish and Scottish, so that's where my mother had European, British, Irish, Scottish. My paternal grandfather, also Irish, but then he also had Standing Rock Sioux, Indian. So a whole other tribe, which I've been researching. I've got to branch off into all the different tribes here. But so I would say I have become sort of passionate and immersed in just researching that history. I've been on all the ancestry and genealogy websites, getting photos that even my own biological family, they had not seen, they were not readily aware of. Wow. And, I think their experiences, growing up within the family different than me coming in as researching, and I'm like digging deep. Where maybe it's like when you grow up in the family, you get information that you're told that's downloaded to you by your family, but maybe certain, for whatever reason, maybe it's for things are painful or just memories that not everything was shared. So I've been kind of like the local genealogy researcher expert for the family. Like, hey, guess what I found now? I found this family of a great grandfather, this photo and a story of a news article, which some of them had never seen before. So it's, I've been connecting that way and providing that. So I will say, a little bit passionate about that side of continuing research.
And so what's been one of your favorite things, tradition-wise or culturally, that you've gained besides having this whole other family? And then, is there a language, the Chemehuevi, do they speak? Is that a language too, or was there a particular language that was like an umbrella language that?
Yeah, so there's many branches of native and indigenous languages, and especially for Chemehuevi, which a whole other topic is Chemehuevi. There's debate about Chemehuevi is the actual name of the tribe when they consider themselves to be Nuwu. The N-U-W-U is Nuwu. I think there was sort of a language where a lot of these languages and tribal names sometimes were adapted by, say, settlers or explorers who came in and maybe mispronounced the name, and that held on. That now this became the name of the tribe, when really, if you go back to what they originally called themselves, was something different. But as far as a language goes, in Chemehuevi language, there is, you'd say, a dialect. They are Southern Paiute. There's different bands of Southern Paiute tribes. Each one maybe have their own similar but maybe different take on the language. That's something that my sister, as being on the cultural committee, is interested in getting involved with, is language preservation. I know as little as I know is Mi'kwas is hello. Okay. I'm trying to learn and see how there's been an effort to put together a language dictionary for Chemehuevi. And that's something where I'm hoping to maybe help, as my sister and I are working, how can we make that happen? Let's make that a reality, because I think that's also in general across, many indigenous cultures is, preserving cultural, historical, preserving languages, holding on to that. So keeping that alive as much as we can is something I think that we're really hoping to contribute to and make sure that we don't lose that history.
And how long has that particular tribe been in that area of what is now the United States?
Yeah, so I'd say there's early documentation that goes back. I think 1,000 years ago is where there's they talk about where this indigenous culture was there. As far as being identified as Chemehuevi, Nuwu, that came about from, again, as people were moving out west and settling, they sort of made contact in, let's say, the 1800s. I think a lot of this information came, like many native cultures, it's everything's passed down through oral history. So they were taking oral accounts about what the history of the tribes were. Paiute and Chemehuevi were nomadic. So really talked about the region of the Colorado River and the states in that region. They would historically migrate between different areas. And it's something that I've learned. They've also, from a practice of preserving, as far as talk about bloodlines, they didn't want to intermingle and within their tribes. They purposely would break off in the families and, locate in other communities, and, they would, get mixed with other tribes in the areas. So they were sort of a blend without the area. Yeah. So I'd say the early, from early times, there's even history this was part of our presentation that my daughter did. But in 29 Palms, you think of Palm Springs area, there's a historical site where Chemehuevi were relocated to this area in 29 Palms called Oasis of Mara. And there's a couple movies have been made about it. There was one that's been on, I think, Amazon, a Jason Momoa movie, The Last Manhunt. It's a true story called Willie Boy, and folks can look that up. It's an interesting story, kind of a Romeo and Juliet indigenous story, based on a true story that Jason Momoa discovered about 29 Palms, and he made a movie about it because he was so, enthralled by it. And there's, he's in the movie, and it's an interesting story. But so they were in that area for a while, and then they were relocated. The federal government came and relocated them, and then basically assigned them this land, assigned Chemehuevi to the area they are now, which is in that eastern California Havasu area.
Okay.
So then they became federally recognized, as I said, in the 1970s, and that's when they started their tribal government. And really, that's just where, kind of like the story where a lot of my family, that's their connections, what they were connected with, and how they, to their knowledge, what they knew. There, it goes back to some ancestors were raised in boarding schools. There's a whole history there as well, where they were trying to put in boarding schools to strip away their indigenous culture and history, try basically to adapt them to Western culture. So I think that's also another part of where certain traditions and languages on danger of being lost or not passed down to the generations. So that's where part of our research coming into this now. At this point, it's like, hey, let's rediscover some of that, and what was that experience like? And some of it was painful.
Yes.
But we're just kind of sharing that knowledge and really trying to rekindle what the history was and rekindle some of the practices. And that's been where I've kind of tapped into to really lean into. Yeah.
That's awesome. If somebody else was going down that path and on the fence about, I'm going back to being adopted, what type of advice would you give somebody who might either be on the fence about searching out their biological roots or just letting them be?
Yeah, I mean, every situation, as we know, is different, right? And I actually had someone reach out to me for more of reconnecting with their indigenous side. That's my wife's cousin has a friend who knows he has some indigenous heritage, and he's kind of got some documentation. He's trying to get enrolled as a member of his tribe. So I've offered my support, or at least my experience of what my experience was like. As far as reconnecting with family, again, I maybe was a little overcautious, and sometimes I think, should I have done anything sooner, earlier, and try and connect earlier with family? Maybe it would have been a nice experience to connect when my biological father was still alive. But, again, if I think back to, my belief is that situation happens the way it's meant to be, and this is how I was meant to connect. I think that what I've learned, at least first from adoption and then with my indigenous side of the family, again, I would go in, just try and don't have any preconceived notions, just kind of be accepting of what the story may be. Whether it turns out the way you hope it to be or just in a different direction, just kind of be open to whatever that might be, and go with grace to whoever the other person, what their experience might be of, you don't know exactly what was going on in their life. So I encourage you to find, the information. I would say whatever you can and what's available. And like I said, the various resources that are out there, like the Facebook adoption support group was great. I don't know how far I would have gotten now if I did not have that information. You've got the DNA testing sites. There is certainly cases now, you hear stories of DNA discovery and people like my sister, my half sister, and others who are like making unknown discoveries on that. But again, I think just if you have a mind of go in with respect, just kind of take some precautions, but make sure that you're approaching it where you have your own psychological safety. You're set up to be able to deal with that scenario, and also to help support the other side, with the family as they're going through that journey. So I would say of course, mine turned out a positive experience. I would recommend anybody who research as much as you can. I think it's important in the end. In the end, if you want to connect with family, if someone went through maybe a not so positive experience, at least you have the knowledge, and you could, say, I've connected. I know who you are now. I exist. And you could end the relationship there if that's what need be. But it could also turn into something pretty positive. Yeah.
It's very complex. I was probably there's a lot of different things to take into consideration. How's this changed your allyship towards indigenous groups now that you
Yeah.
now are a member of one, and now you live in the Northwest, where we are deeply rooted in and around a lot of different indigenous cultures.
Right. Well, I think one thing I did first and foremost, so through my company, I work at a management consulting firm, and like many companies now, they have employee resource groups, and there's DEI initiatives, and there was an ERG that was set up around the time where I made Discovery. We're called Latte, which is Latin X and Tribal Team Elevation. So I saw that group, like a cute name, and I saw that group start, and I joined right away. I was like, "Oh, Tribal Team Elevation! This is great. I'd love to connect with other, tribal indigenous members of the firm." And I joined the group, and I come to find out that predominantly the members, the leadership members of that group, and the community members were of Latinx background, and there was no indigenous representation or no one who identified that way. So to the group, I offered up my story. I was like, "Hey, I'd just love to share my story here." And they did a spotlight and did a little video and shared my story like I am today. And then following after that, they nominated me to be like a co-lead of their community group and work stream. So I've used that opportunity where I was coming in almost as a perspective of an ally, but now it's really coming in as an enrolled member, an enrolled citizen, that I bring some indigenous representation. And that's been an interesting experience where I've they look to me now as the indigenous voice and representation. And that's been an interesting dynamic of this process where this is something I've been seeking my entire life. I've got validation. I'm enrolled in the tribe. I've got my family there, but I still, again, maybe going back to my, overcautious nature, where I didn't feel like I had the tools or all the knowledge to just be the indigenous voice of the community. I was like, well, in some aspects, maybe I'm still an ally or I'm learning. So my goal has been to partner with those who do know, who have the knowledge, and to bring in, maybe it's groups in the area, if we have guest speakers, or to collaborate with family. I helped organize with Native Heritage Month last year. We put together an event, and I brought through my family a guest speaker, to someone to speak on topics, because I felt like I'm not equipped for this, but let me help facilitate that. That's kind of been my role, is where I really want to bring more of those voices to the table. I want to amplify indigenous causes. So that's any opportunity I have. I'm sharing, thought leadership content that's relevant to that within our group, within our channel, and to the firm as a whole. Because my goal is, hopefully we can increase those indigenous representation and have more of the workforce on that side. So that would be my goal from it.
That's awesome. You bring up a good point about what is an identity, like what is being indigenous mean nowadays, or even just in general, or being Latinx, being mixed. And it's like, we're just evolutions of these different, these different ethnicities and these different groups, and it's part of the story it's just part of the story, right?
Yeah, I think I shared a story with you. It's an actress who's indigenous actress. She's also mixed race, and it was the actress, and I unfortunately can't remember her name, but it was from True Detective, the last season of True Detective. It was based in Alaska area, and an indigenous actress who talked about her experience growing up, and it's like where some identified her as being Black, some identified her as indigenous, and she said she had issue fitting in the box of everyone what they wanted her to identify. And, her point was we're not one dimensional, and being indigenous background is not a one dimensional thing. It could, throughout family experience and over time, we do become blended and become multiracial, as the theme of your podcast, and how that blends, but still to appreciate and to acknowledge those parts of your history and your ancestry, and to recognize that. So I think that's become an interesting part of the story, and how we identify, but it could be a mix, again, many beautiful things, but let's call those out. Let's not put that in the past. Let's make sure we amplify all those.
Yeah. It's enjoying what's to come and taking the past and the culture and the traditions with you
Right.
along the way to keep those things alive. Last question I always ask is, what's your recipe for world peace?
Yeah.
We end on an easy one.
It's an easy one. Yeah. We have another hour or so. Well, yeah. World peace can go different directions there. I think, I kind of question, as long as mankind has been around, the dawn of empires and dynasties, has there ever been true world peace?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's how you look at world peace, or what's your definition of world peace. I always kind of think of, I can control what's in my environment, what's in my world. So if you can, I think, find peace in your world, that's the best thing you can do. You can't affect global world peace, but if you can affect peace within the world that you control. So, examples, I think, just we've had a pretty toxic environment the last few years, right? And maybe where some groups and individuals are having issues, like even just agreeing to disagree, or to kind of come together to a common place. I think if we can learn to live within our community and each other better, and not be hung up on things that you can't control, and it's okay to not have 100% agreement with everybody. You yourself might have better peace of mind, and if you can kind of maybe distribute that within your family and your social circles to have that acceptance, I think that's probably where you can oneself find world peace for them. But I think, for tying it back to Indigenous culture and to the history, I think you can also look at world peace like, okay, what's peace for the world, planet Earth? What's important to me is, like, I think our planet can make the decision for world peace pretty soon if we keep going the direction we are, and give us the boot. So I think if we can, and there's been progress here. I think there's been positive movement towards, you look at land back initiatives for Indigenous cultures. There was a recent case in California where a tribe, first time ever, was given essentially ownership, or to take over management of federal parks land, and to manage the land. I think we're learning, hopefully there's an awareness now where Indigenous cultures and practices are able to, they're the ones who we have the cultural knowledge and history to how to best take care of the environment and protect natural habitats. And in the end, that's going to be the best for what we're dealing with everything of climate change, and protect the globe. So I think that's another aspect to look at. World peace. We need to have a world to live in. So if we can look at causes that will help protect a land and amplify those kind of opportunities, I think we'll be halfway there. That maybe we won't get the boot.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think there was an Indigenous group of young kids, like some teenagers, that sued the government for failing to recognize climate change too this last year. Yeah,
there's another cause. It's rights of nature, which is something my half sister has been really getting involved with and learning, and how that can benefit our own tribe, which is located on the Colorado River, and there's talks of water, access to water, and the rights of the water. This really, it was given by the federal government, to the tribes to have first priority. But then you talk about, like, who has, then everybody downstream from that, who's benefiting from the water, and who's, how do we best protect that and make sure that we're not just stepping on, Indigenous land. I mean, I'm interested to see where this goes. And I'm actually connected with, through one of my groups, is a tribal law attorney through one of my clients. Cause you talk about, we talk about where we're going as a direction for, protecting the land, electrification of vehicles and all the mining that they're going to have to do for the batteries for electric vehicles. That's another aspect of this that people are not really aware of at this point. It's going to really, a lot of it's going to encroach on Indigenous land because they're mining for these materials. That's a whole other thing that we're going to have to face and debate with how do we address that in the coming years. We get more and more electric vehicles on the road. So I think that's been an important aspect of what I want my family to get involved with, and what I'm trying to amplify within my professional groups is, let's look at this is the best opportunity we have right now before we go any further about how we can really protect the planet and how we can, keep ourselves from, going extinct.
Yeah, I love that. I did some work with my with a coach, and we were talking about in the early stages of thinking about what I wanted this podcast to be, and we did this exercise. And when I peeled it all back, it was I love environmentalism. Huge environmentalist, to the point of where I annoy a lot of people, but
yeah,
it's I think the idea of people being at peace and sharing their stories and understanding their identities and understanding they're not alone, and others are going through these journeys to self-identity, and finding, as you mentioned, there's various different kinds of ways we can look at world peace, whether it's no wars, or peace with the earth, or just the internal peace. Like you said, it seems like it should be as easy as if we all make a decision to wake up and embrace world peace, that it starts with us and we all walk outside, then it would be pretty peaceful, so it seems like that would be so easy, right? But
it's easy, we all have a role to play, and hopefully people can recognize that. But
John, this was amazing. Like there's so many other things I could ask you, and maybe that's we could definitely have a part 2, and even having family members or others on to share their side of this story, because it's like you're sharing one perspective of something that was so impactful, not only on you, your life, your daughter, obviously, and it showed in the way that she was so proud of presenting your heritage, but all the other people that are now part of your bigger family. So I really appreciate you sharing this with me today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that, Antonio. Yeah, and I think I agree with you, because when we met, I talked about I had this dream of starting a podcast to share all this out there. Time and energy to do that. I respect what you do, but thank you for giving me the platform to share it with you here. So
definitely
to connect with you in the future.
Yep. You have a great afternoon, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Antonio. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Multiracialverse podcast. My name is Antonio Fernandez. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Huge shout out to my friend Johannes Skoda for mixing and creating the intro music, and DJ Kazam for the track.